That's a rhetorical question, by the way, because I'm pretty sure you don't.
I've been so free here, you know, almost anything I wanted to.
So far, RNG Reviews has been a pretty fun way to visit neat looking games I haven't given enough attention before, and then just talk about them for a bit while practicing my writing and editing skills in a more comfy and freeform way. Overall, a really nice experience, which ends now, because I can already tell this is going to be a review in which I'm going to be struggling to say something positive. Actually, let's start with the best aspects of this game, its universe and visuals. Remember Me takes place in a cyberpunk future where memories became a commodity, something to share, store, use as a resource, and in the extreme cases, steal, withhold and modify. As you may have guessed from that brief description, this is also a dystopian future, one where people can get addicted on injecting themselves with someone else's nice and pleasant memories until it eventually ruins them, one where people can get rid of their painful memories instead of living with them, and one where prisoners are made into empty husks, more which are simply people who disagree with the society they're living in. All of that is contrasted with the way this world looks, because it's gorgeous. One thing Remember Me really excels at are the lovely vistas and dense detail in its locations, whether that means dirty slums of the memory addicted or clean, mirrors edge-like facilities, a visual style I would like to see more of in general. This game also tries really hard to make you appreciate all of this. It frequently steals the camera just to show you the current location from the angles you normally wouldn't be able to. It makes you slowly walk through them so even the small details won't go unnoticed, or suddenly reveals vast, open, beautiful vista of the futuristic Paris. It's just a shame that these great looking locations actually end up feeling claustrophobic and locked up. And here's where we already run into the first major problem of Remember Me. It's linear. Painful linear. It shows you all of these amazing looking places and gorgeous views, and all of that does not matter at all, as this is a game made out of empty rooftops, grey back alleys and hallways of outdoors. That's not to say there aren't some brief hidden paths you can take in order to take a collectible or two, or that some locations do let you breathe with more, but it's not enough, especially with the way Remember Me constantly almost teases you with its visual quality. And the second major part of the presentation, the soundtrack, generally sounds muted and underwhelming, with no standout tracks at all. So even if the best part of this game is inherently flawed, what about the rest? You're playing as Nilin, a memory hunter with, and ironically enough, white memory, who just managed to escape from prison with help from Edge, a mysterious hacker and leader of the so-called terrorist. Your everyday radical group of cyberpunk flavor fighting against a man. We are told that Nilin is a legend, one of the few people capable of not only stealing memories, but changing and modifying them, and as the majority of the characterization and development Nilin receives throughout the entire game, because she's painfully boring. Her visual design is kinda nice, but she's an angsty, melodramatic protagonist without a single interesting line or moment, one with an occasionally lackluster voice acting.
This little Red Riding Hood's got a basket full of kick-ass!
Unless if the characters aren't any better. The fact that I'm unable to recall a single personality trait or even a name apart from Nilin and Edge speaks volumes. So is the story itself at least interesting? Haha. Of course it's not. You are following the lead of Edge, getting closer and closer to getting your memory back with each target or visited location. That's obviously a poor premise if I already don't care about the main character from the start, and there were honestly moments where I was confused about what I was even doing in my current mission, if your targets are one-note bad guys without a pinch of charisma. That's honestly all I have to say about the story. I was engaged maybe for the first hour or so, but after that my attention, and mainly effort of forcing my attention on, quickly dropped off. I think I specifically gave up when Nilin, a memory hunter on the run with a price placed upon her head, decides to get to a target through a busy residential area in the middle of the day, and then acts very surprised when she has the police on her tail. Not even mentioning that both of the Remember Me plot twists are kinda meh. First one is that the inventor of the memory mixing technology is actually Nilin's father, his entire project being the result of wanting to erase traumatic event from her memory, which also makes the plot point of Nilin being jailed for an accidental murder and getting her memory erased, without her parents somehow knowing about it, even more nonsensical, but whatever. Second one is that Edge is not who he seems to be. He's actually not a person at all. He's a broken mixture of all the traumatic and bad memories people got rid of, and now he just wants to die. Or at least a part of him that contacted Judas. And as I'm writing this, I'm realizing that actually sounds mildly interesting, but it's also revealed in the last few minutes of the game without any build-up, not to be developed or expanded on any further, and it had zero impact on me. Not even mentioning that all the reveal about Edge ultimately turns into is a really lame final boss fight. Let's just move on to the next section. Maybe there's still something that can save this one. Right? Gameplay has 3 main aspects: climbing, combat and occasionally memory mixing. There's also a few simple puzzle mechanics, but all of them are so rudimentary and often so annoying that this brief mention is also all the attention that is going to be given in this review. I actually enjoyed the climbing more than I expected to. I know this mechanic gets lots of slack even in games of a much higher quality, as many people find them too simple and boring. And that's true in the Remember Me as well. It is really simplistic and requires pretty much just moving the control stick and occasionally pressing a button. Not even mentioning there's a small arrow helping you navigate at all times. But that didn't matter for me. There's just something satisfying and visually interesting about controlling a character who finds his way across places where there seemingly isn't one. Climbing is also fluid and responsive in its controls, and locations it takes place in are visually interesting enough to make me overall enjoy it. This is also the best part of the gameplay. So then we have the combat, which is an Arkham-like clone that tries to put few unique twists on itself. The keyword being tries. The way it works is that you have several combos of varying complexity. Complexity in huge quotations, because it's just pressing X and Y in different combinations, nothing else. And the only difference between them is just their length and animation. They don't have any different effects or moves. That's where presents come in. You can unlock and apply different effects on the individual strikes of the combos, whether that means more damage, healing, reducing cooldowns, changing and increasing the power of the previous effect, or... That's all actually. In theory, this should make the combat feel customizable and open to experimentation as you're trying to find the best combination of the bonus effects, but I had by far the biggest success when I stopped combining and varying the effects and instead just specialized them all into a single combo, which obviously kinda kills the whole experimentation part. So, reducing the cooldowns of what? A rage ability that quickly becomes irrelevant because of how many enemies are able to block it. An AoE stun that, again, stops working on most enemies later on. An ability that turns robotic opponents on your side, which is an enemy type that doesn't show up very often by the way. A stealth takedown that's useful only against one annoying enemy type, and a weak AoE bump. As you may have guessed, I don't find this combat system to be good. I don't find it to be good at all. It lacks both the polish and smoothness of its biggest inspiration and interesting additions or even improvements of its best imitations, which means this combat doesn't feel like a variation or a twist on it, but just like a failed copycat. And it's flawed behind its main mechanics. I could go on. I could talk about unreliable targeting, several obnoxious enemy types, absence of a counter and with it also limiting your defensive capability to clumsy dodging, boring boss fights, some of the lamest QTs I ever seen, or the awkward to use an ranged weapon, but I'll stop. And finally, the memory mixing is initially interesting and refreshing, but ultimately boring, clumsy to control and often nonsensical. It shows up only a handful of times throughout the entire game, and each time you're tasked with changing someone's memory of a specific event so that they would side with you or change their opinion or something. Issue number 1. These don't make any sense. How do you make an elite assassin that needs the money from your head to pay for her husband's medical treatment into your best friend? You make her think her husband died during the procedure. How do you make your mother change her opinion on pressing on with an oppressive, discriminative law? You make her think car crash 15 years ago was fully her fault. What? And apart from that, it just feels weird and stiff to actually interact with. As you're scrubbing through the memory to find these little, occasionally hard to see flickers indicating you can alter something, and if you want to reverse a change, which you'll often need to do because some are just red herrings, you need to start again, depending on how far the first flicker you changed is. It's interesting, but ultimately not great. So is there anything to do after you finish the main campaign? No, not really. Only DLC released is this really tiny and underwhelming animation pack, and I also honestly see zero replay value in general. Only sort of side content are hidden collectibles, whether that means extensions to our focus meter which allow you to use more abilities after each other, not that I ever needed that, or lore collectibles. Those can be interesting in a game where I actually care about the story and lore, but this wasn't really the case. For example, I just recently finished Bioshock 2, and that one has excellent lore collectibles, telling interesting little side stories or adding depth to characters and locations. Remember Me instead gives you a dry, boring history lesson lore dump for a world that's not interesting behind its core concepts to begin with, wasting your time even more. So as you probably already guessed, I didn't enjoy this game much, which is a shame. Believe it or not, I don't hate play. I went into this expecting a fun adventure game set in an interesting universe, and I liked the art direction, core ideas of its own flavor of cyberpunk and certain gameplay sections enough to pull through, but that doesn't mean I loved it. I don't regret playing it, but every part of this game is flawed in a different, frustrating way, and ultimately I don't recommend Remember Me, because I can already tell it's an experience I will eventually forget about. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, consider sharing, commenting, liking or even subscribing. It would help this channel a lot. My name is Bate, take care and I'll see you soon.
It's a perfect circle.